Hello, everyone. My name is Jack Murillo. I'm an OCA volunteer and moderator for tonight's Happy Fest Q&A, along with Sunny Liu, that you also see on screen. Thank you for tuning in to OCA Greater Houston's Happy Fest. That's the Houston Asian American Pacific Islander Film Festival. And we're joined by the director of the film that we just saw, Raymond Lai. Do you mind introducing yourself, Raymond, and telling us where you're calling us from?
Sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Raymond Lai, and I am calling from Los Angeles, California, currently.
Awesome. We just wanted to start off with a question kind of about the formatting of your film. Yeah, so when we were watching, we noticed that you guys used kind of an animated cartoon style for the background and props, but then used live action actors. So you're just wondering why you chose to use this kind of hybrid medium in particular, and were there any difficulties working pretty much entirely on green screen, at least from what it looks like?
Yeah. I think so. There were really like two primary reasons for me, anyways, as the director, to shoot it this way. I think the first consideration was a practical one. You know, from a producerial standpoint, my producer and I had a lot of difficulty finding a practical location to shoot this in, and primarily because convenience stores are limited by they often employ extended hours. You know, they're convenience stores, and so even if they were willing to allow us to shoot there, which most of them were not, it was generally very late or early morning, and we couldn't even get an 8-hour block in. And that would mean that, less than 8-hour days, ostensibly overnights. And that just wasn't really something that myself or my producer wanted to do. And then secondly, a lot of the stores are obviously very small. Convenience stores are, they try to use their space as efficiently as possible, trying to provide as many products as they can to their client base. So that just wasn't realistic or feasible to stage what we wanted to do at most of the places that were even willing to have the conversation in the first place. So that was primary consideration number one. And then when we started coming up across that limitation, we started looking at creative reasons. And I think it was pretty late one night. I was actually watching South Park, and I can't remember now what episode it was, but it struck me that animation is allowed to get away with discussing certain topics and certain controversial, like what could be considered controversial subject matter, in a way that live action material can't. I think it allows them to engage in a way that live action couldn't. And since we knew we were doing subject matter that could very easily be deemed, controversial in some way, we decided to, I decided to explore this as an option. And so, and also a third, from a personal standpoint, at the time, this was, again, we filmed this quite some time ago now. Can I say when we filmed this, or does that matter? I don't know if that's a consideration.
Go ahead, if you want.
I mean, it was we filmed in the summer of 2009.
Wow.
Give you an idea of how long ago this was. And so in 2009, if you think back, it was a time when shooting entirely on green screen was not a thing that was done really much. Like, features were starting to do it. You had some features that came out, and so those features were highly influential. I mean, movies like Speed Racer. I think the Wachowskis' Speed Racer is very underrated in my opinion, and it was a big influence on me. Just both the usage of color and the usage of green screen. And films like Sin City, obviously, but then 300, and then you had movies like Sky Captain: The World of Tomorrow, but like Avatar had not come out yet when we shot this. Obviously, you have The Mandalorian, films like that and like the Marvel movies that are shooting entirely on green screen. It's a completely different workflow, but at the time, like I said, it wasn't as employed as often, and so that was something that was very interesting to me. I just, George Lucas is a big. This was done as my thesis film for USC's film school, and George Lucas is obviously a big contributor and a big influence on that film school. And I think his methodology of employing entirely green screening production wasn't necessarily something that I wanted to do. At least I didn't want to use it the same way, but I did find it fascinating, and so that was really interesting to me too, just to see, what that would look like. And I actually proposed it to my art director, who ended up doing the bulk of the animation, and he, after I pitched it to him, he was like, yeah, that's a great idea. I really want to do that. I would really like to help out on that. And so, I was mentioning to you, backstage that this would not exist without his work. His work is phenomenal, and it really makes the show. And I couldn't have done it without him. And like I said, it wouldn't be very good without his work. As for complications or problems that posed, absolutely. I mean, I think as a director, not being able to visualize what it's going to look like in the moment at any given time makes it very difficult to compose shots, to block actors, to stage, and just all of that. Because I definitely, we had a common refrain on set, which was getting lost in the green, because we would come out, my DP and I would come out at the end of the day just like, not even the end of the day, but like the middle of the day, we'd be getting into a conversation with my AD, and just like, what are we supposed to be shooting now? That's right. Okay. I don't remember how, like I've completely lost perspective of where I am physically, and you'd have to like take a step back. And thankfully we boarded everything, and as we did our homework and we did our preparation. But I definitely did find myself in moments, needing to say to my AD, hold on, like I need to get my visual bearings, because I'm kind of lost right now. Give me a second. Or my DP would ask me a question. So that definitely posed an issue. I think I can't speak for the actors, but I can say that I definitely had conversations with some of the actors afterwards. And yes, even going into it, they were concerned, because they'd never worked in this way either. And so they were concerned about just simple things like eye lines and things like what they were holding. And so that's why we ended up having a conversation with them about the props. And so we ended up having to do physical props that were fabricated, because otherwise I think it was just too difficult for them to grasp the idea of a broom if it wasn't there, right? Because there was a time at which like the broom was supposed to be animated and things like that. So that was an issue for the actors, for their performance, and just for them to get a sense of, again, they were getting lost in the green as well. And I think every so often we would have to take a step back and like kind of orient ourselves. But ultimately it wasn't that different. Like I said, when you do your homework, it's not that difficult to do, but it can be disorienting, and it did prove itself to be disorienting at times. Yeah. But now it's the norm. Now that's just how things are shot, apparently, especially now. I mean, given the current circumstances, and animation is obviously not really as affected by what's happening. And so obviously our actors have to be there, but I was just watching, this is a bit of a tangent, so I apologize, but I was just watching, what was I watching? What We Do in the Shadows, the TV show, which I hadn't been watching. I don't know if you guys watched that.
It's hilarious.
It's great. It's fantastic. And I can't believe it took me this long to begin the series, because I loved the movie when it came out. But there was an episode when they have a lot of cameos. I don't know if you remember that episode in the first season, when they have the sort of vampire council, and they have, I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but there's this vampire council with a lot of cameos. I won't say who they are, but it's very clear that, many of the cameos were filmed on green screen, and they were superimposed into these shots. And I think the eye lines don't quite match, and that's how I could tell. And it is hard, because it's hard to line those things up, and it does present a problem. Anyhow, hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
And before we get into our next question, I just want to remind our audiences that they can interact with us through the YouTube link, and you can leave your comments and questions in the link chat. We can broadcast it on screen, and we can have the answer for you as well. But you touched on something about animation being a way for you to sort of confront controversial messages. And I think part of that is like the use of humor and its absurdity. Yeah. And I think absurdity is, it adds like a sort of another dimension into your film. And because of that, I feel like there are a lot of different ways to interpret your film as well. So I'm sort of, from your perspective, what do you think is your film about?
It's funny that you phrase it that way, because I do think that the broadest answer is it is about perspective. It is, it may be a little bit reductive to say that, but that is the truth. When Randall and I were writing it, we were having conversations. Sorry, I was just looking at the comments. We would have conversations about the themes and what we're trying to do and what we're trying to address. And sorry, my memory is a little fuzzy on some of these conversations because it has been some time, but we did talk a lot about perspective. I mean, it's fairly explicitly stated in the text of the film itself. It's not much to say that it's about perspective, because it really is. And we were very conscious that about stating it so explicitly. But it's about at least trying to present itself, at least trying to present something that might make you begin a conversation with yourself, at the very least, about why you have preconceived notions about other people who may not look like you, who may not dress like you, whatever it is. And because that's, if you're ever going to confront what you consider to be an issue or a problem, I mean, it's fairly simplistic to say, but it's the truth. The first person you have to have a conversation with is yourself. And so I think from a very baseline standpoint, we were trying to just say, hey, look, in a very broad and absurd way, we as a person, like I am, given to my own preconceptions, my own preconceived notions about people. And why is that? Why do I feel this way? Why do I think these things? Why am I subject to my own inherent biases? And if you don't like the answers to those questions, hopefully you do have answers to those questions. Then it becomes incumbent upon you to do the work to try to provide better answers for those questions. And I think right now, of all times, more than ever, maybe not more than ever, but right now, I think that is a conversation that a lot of people should be having, should be engaging in. And it's not easy work. It's not an easy question to ask yourself, and it's not easy to confront, but it's something that's necessary, because I believe most people are guilty of it, of some preconceived notion that is probably ill-informed. And so it's really just that. It's just trying to provide make viewers, first off, hope they enjoy the film, but then secondly, that they then take a step back and then wonder, or at least just have a conversation again, like I said, about why their perspectives, like how their perspectives are shaped, and how other people's perspectives might be different from that, and trying to empathize with that position and try to understand where that perspective is being informed by as well, beyond your own perspective. So I think that, like, I'm not trying to tackle, I personally was not trying to I guess I didn't have such a lofty goal with it. I just wanted to make people laugh and enjoy themselves. And maybe if it made them question something about themselves, great. If not, I don't, I can only do so much as an artist. Like Sunny, you mentioned you were an artist as well. And art is always open to interpretation. So I think, Jack, to your point, people can interpret this in different ways, right? And that's fine. Everyone will take away something different from it, and that's okay. I don't want to tell them that they're right or wrong, but I think that from where I'm standing, the movie is about perspective and understanding, and trying to understand other people's perspectives and why they're, like, where they're coming from with regards to their perspectives. So, yeah,
totally. I think honestly, my favorite part about contemporary art is this acceptance of all these different ways of interpreting it. And I just want to address the audience question by Eugene. He asked, technology is enabling filmmakers to film in ways that were previously far beyond their production budget. So what new technology are you hoping to take advantage of in the next 5 or even 10 years?
That's That's a good question. I mean, I think I'm not as abreast on the current technology. I mean, the current production technologies that I feel as though. That's a good question. Let me think about that for a second because like I just I'm sort of coming up empty. I guess maybe could you speak to like any? Are you talking about any specific technologies that the person? I don't know if the person is still watching, but if they had any specific technologies in mind that are being employed, like I think obviously VR tech is beginning to be employed as a narrative device, as a storytelling tool. That's really fascinating to me. I haven't really engaged with VR that much though personally, but I do think that makes that force everything I've read about it. It seems as though that is forcing filmmakers to re-evaluate how they're telling their story, right? Because you're unable to use certain tools of cinematic language, specifically editorial, and so that's really fascinating to me. But coming from a background of mired in editorial and thinking in cuts and thinking in the power of cuts, it's hard for me to wrap my head around not being able to deploy that as a tool.
Definitely.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So, okay. Yes. So I think that the virtual spaces. Thank you, Eugene, also for that question, and thank you so much for watching. I mean, I hope you watch, but thank you. I that the virtual spaces is fascinating, but it's basic. It feels like from what because I'm not going to pretend like I'm an expert in it at all, but it feels as though it's basically an evolution of what we had tried to do with At Your Convenience in some way, right? It's just very advanced version of that. So I would love to try my hand at that. I mean I think I have my qualms with the show, but I think the usage of that, the employment of that technology is astounding. I couldn't, when I first saw those behind the scenes footage of that show, I couldn't believe that was the way that it was produced. I was blown away. So that's very interesting to me, and it will be fascinating to see as that, like Eugene was mentioning, as the cost and accessibility of that technology comes down, how younger filmmakers are going to employ that to really explore anything, and in a way that is in a realistic way that I think is even unattainable through current like green screen technology. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I guess it'll be interesting to see what James Cameron, as old as he is, will employ with Avatar 2. I mean, say what you will about those movies, but it did push a certain type of filmmaking forward. I think like 3D was interesting to me, but I never utilized as a technology, and I think people have moved beyond the engagement with 3D as both a filmmaking tool and as a consumption tool. So it seems as though they're like I said, they're pushing VR. I don't know. I again, I haven't really kept abreast. I guess my mind is getting duller in my old age, but I don't. What are the other? Because that's to Eugene's point, that virtual spaces is kind of the only one I could think of. Besides VR, I don't know. You're both young artists. Are you aware? What production tools are anything you're aware of? I mean, we don't have to dwell on that, but
yeah, we can actually we can also continue this discussion offline. Obviously, there's a lot to explore there as well. But I just want to pivot to our last few questions.
Sure.
Speaking of the future, even though these are uncertain times, it's important to remember that this is a census year and an election year as well.
Yes.
So from our perspective at SBA, we think it's a crucial time to make a difference. So we were wondering, why is it important for you, even during lockdown, to do our due diligence?
Well, to your point, I mean, are you asking about the census or voting, or are you sort of bundling that up into this?
I'm bundling it together. I think.
Okay.
Doing like our civic duty.
Right. I think to address your point about voting, I mean, I think the past few years have not been indication enough of the importance of voting. I think that they should absolutely be a lesson in the importance and the power of what voting can do. And with that said, there's also other ways to be civically engaged, but voting is specific, especially at the local level. It's not just about the presidency. Obviously, there's we'll say problematic politicians at every level, and there is systemic problems that exist all the way down the line, and change starts and can be affected at the lowest level of civic engagement. So it's a reminder that voting matters. The elections are won by single votes. That's not, I mean, it's not, it's reductive to say, but it's important to note that voting does matter and can affect change. I mean, look what happened in the 2018 election with with what happened with the House election. The ability for Democrats to take the House back only happened because so many people were mobilized to vote, specifically young people. Obviously, I mean, I really hope that they are taking the message that, look, it's a bit easy and sort of cliche to say, but youth are the future, and they should be exercising their frustration at the ballot box as well as they are now, taking to the streets with the protests. I think that's great. I think that the census is very important because we have a limited amount of resources in the country, and those resources need to be allocated in a manner that is beneficial to the people who need them most. And the only way to do that is to be able to identify where people are, how many are there, and what their needs are. And the census is a major step to at least count where those, to at least identify where people are, and where those resources are best allocated. Whether or not the information will be implemented that's in the best way, that's not the point. The point is that you can't even begin to make those decisions on allocation, or just the decisions without knowing where the people, like, how many people are there, what their what the needs are. So I think engagement in both the census and the elections are vital to ensure a thriving democracy in this country, which I think anyone here watching, and I'm assuming most people here involved in the festival, want to see continue. So yeah.
Thank you so much for speaking to that, especially because we as AAPI are so often undercounted and underutilized our political.
Absolutely.
But to close with these questions, if the audience wasn't able to see your film today during the festival, are there other mediums where we can watch that?
Absolutely. Actually, both cuts, the original cut of At Your Convenience and the Octagon remix. The Octagon remix is a re-edit with new music. Both of them are available to be watched on Vimeo for free, ad-free. I think they're broken up into like chunks on YouTube, but I think the whole thing is available. I believe the whole thing is available to be watched on Vimeo. And I'm proud of both versions. They're not that different, but I'm especially proud of the Octagon remix because it allowed me to work with somebody I admire greatly in the commissioning of that project. So, but yeah, Vimeo. Go to Vimeo, At Your Convenience, search. Probably search Randall Park. I'm sure you'll be able to find it.
Awesome. And then we just want to end on asking if there's any upcoming projects that you're working on that you would like to share with the audience. Absolutely.
I have a new short coming out. I don't know when at this point. It was supposed to actually be a part of this festival, and unfortunately the circumstances prevented that from happening because of both COVID and some music licensing rights issues. But the short is titled Logan Lee and the Rise of the Purple Dawn. It's very absurd. And it's another comedy, and but it stars Osric Chow, if you both are familiar with him, Nikki Suhu, and music is also by Dan the Automator, who is behind Dr. Octagon, who did commissioned the the Octagon remix of At Your Convenience. And it's it's all pretty much an entire Asian American cast. Really proud of it. I think it's really great. So this is Logan Lee and the Rise of the Purple Dawn that should be premiering. I don't know. I actually, at this point, I don't want to. Yeah, it should be in the next couple months. because I think we basically had to pivot and reevaluate our strategy with release because of what happened with all the festivals and everything. So, and I also have a web comic that should be coming out towards the end of the year called Buddy Starblazer: The Adventures of Buddy Starblazer, the Galaxy's Worst Bounty Hunter. So that's another one to be on the lookout for. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Ray. And you guys can follow him on his social media platforms that you can see on the banner below to see when all of these wonderful new projects will come out. Thank you so much again, Ray, for your time. I'm so sorry to
Thank
hear
you. Thank you both so
COVID.
much for having me. Oh, no, my gosh. Thank you. And thank you for anybody who watched. Thank you for your questions, Eugene. Thank you so much. Anybody who is just watching, thank you. Thank you so much for supporting Asian American films. Thank you for supporting Asian American artists. Thank you for supporting independent artists. We need that support now. We really do need that support. And I can't thank you both enough. And just the festival. I want to thank Jessica, who's not here. Yes, thank you all so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you also for taking the time to be here with us. And with that, Sunny's going to close us out.
And so thank you everyone for joining us today. We just want to invite you guys to make sure to check out our next films titled Malakau and Women of the Photographs, playing immediately right after this. Go to happyfest.com for the full schedule. And before we end, I'd just like to bring attention to the current racial injustices that our Black communities are facing right now. We as AAPI are standing in solidarity with Black Lives Matter. So please visit tinyurl.com/BLMAAPI in all caps. You should see it on the screen too, to learn more concrete Houston-specific ways to get involved and take action. We'll also be conducting a special panel next week to discuss the current political climate and ways we can engage and be allies. So stay tuned for more details. On behalf of OCA Greater Houston, thank you for joining us at Happy Fest and have a lovely evening. We would like to acknowledge the grief and outrage right now, especially within our Black communities. Our city, Houston, continues to hurt. George Floyd was a native Houstonian, and according to the Houston Chronicle, we have had 6 police killings this past month alone.
As Asian Americans, we have to acknowledge and interrogate our own anti-Blackness and relative privilege within American society. We have to actively unlearn our own biases. It was Black activists who pushed against racist naturalization laws and supported Asian Americans after the racist murder of Vincent Chen.
Black activists stepping into action have benefited our community in profound ways. We must move beyond being a bystander and join the larger movement of Black Lives Matter. Join us in donating, protesting, petitioning, educating ourselves, and supporting our Black brothers and sisters in whatever way we can. Visit tinyurl.com/BLMAAPI, all caps, for more detailed ways to help, including Houston-specific bail funds, scripts to call local representatives, and translated letters to our family members, all of which you can join us in doing in between screenings. On behalf of OCA Greater Houston and the Happy Fest Committee, thank you for joining us on this broadcast.